Hey guys, in this video we're going to be painting, you're doing your great big, the porch leaner that says Hello Fall. I'm just going to be painting the small version. One, it's easier for you to see because I can get the camera closer, and two, it's just more economical for me to use a small piece of wood opposed to a great big one because I don't need another one painted. So to get started, make sure you have some paper towels. I like to just keep a roll on hand for a quick cleanup if I have any messes, and just keep my brushes dry. After cleaning them in my jar, which you need something to put water in, and you're gonna put your plate out with all your paints on it. You likely need more paint than me. You'll have more paint than me. That's perfectly good. Right, so I'm gonna get started. You are gonna use a big brush. Obviously yours is much bigger. I'm gonna use this medium-sized brush just because my spaces are smaller. And I'm gonna just start out with this burnt orange color, and I'm just gonna get that whole big pumpkin shape filled in. And I do like to do it in segments. It helps try to keep those shapes. And it's nice, thin, even coat of paint. You don't want any big old globs. Get them smoothed out nice and even. Yours will be a little easier to paint in just the sense that the grain of my wood is going the wrong direction. Yours will be up and down. So it's not always important to go with the grain, but it's easier because the paint wants to get down in those little grooves or whatever. And don't sweat it if you get a little sloppy and kind of go up onto the flower petals. That's okay. That can be fixed. When we do those, we're gonna do them a very, very pale yellow, which means we're adding a lot of white, and that white will block out this dark orange color. So got this one done. Come in and do this one. And again, no big deal if we get onto that leaf some. Apologize again for my smoke alarm. Needs a battery change. You'll hear it beeping periodically. It's a little bit annoying, sorry. I can't reach it to get it down. Need to get a big ladder. So on this outside edge, here where this line is, you are going to want to make sure you get that white covered. So you don't want that to show when you're done with your painting. I'm just kind of smoothing it out. Make sure I got all my gloves. If you want to do another coat, feel free. I'm just going to throw another quick coat on. Not really necessary. We are going to be layering some lighter oranges on. But I do know when I painted, the size that you have, the bigger version, it did soak up a lot more paint. I mean, it's just more wood. So get it nice and covered and as even as you can. Just be careful you're not going back over onto areas that are starting to dry. They become very tacky, and then your fresh wet paint likes to pull up that half-dried sticky paint, and then you'll end up with kind of a mess. So make sure before you go back in to do another coat, you're good and dry. I like to keep a blow dryer nearby so I don't have to wait too long. It speeds it up. Okay. So next I'm going to do some lighter orange. I'm going to mix a lot of yellow and this bright yellow, some orange, the regular orange, not the burnt orange. That stirred up. And I'm going to take a little bit of white. Stir that in there also. And if at this point it looks a little bit too yellowy, you could just stir in some more of your orange. And I'm going to take a little bit of this burnt orange and stir that in as well. So, you see how my brush is so full of paint from stirring? I'm just going to take all the excess paint off. And then I'm just going to leave my brush pretty dry. Oops, looks like I splashed. It's all right. So I'm going to start with this piece over here, and I'm just going to brush on this lighter orange color. Just nice long strokes. You have a much bigger pumpkin you're working on, so make sure you're just nice long strokes. Everywhere you kind of pick your brush up and put it down, it's going to leave a mark. And it's okay, go right through your flowers. Brush it right through. Now when I come and do this segment, I'm gonna leave a gap so that this darker orange kind of creates a line. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna get pretty close to that edge. But I'm leaving, so where's my other line? Right in here. But if I left that darker orange kind of peeking through there, and it created a nice kind of dark line which like helps create the segments of the pumpkin. I'll do this last little bit. And again, when I get close to the other segment, I'm just gonna leave a little gap. There's very little paint on my brush. You can always go back and pick up more. So there, I can kind of see these three segments of pumpkin. Now I'm gonna go a little bit lighter, which means I'm gonna stir in some more yellow. Still working with that nice bright yellow. I'm gonna add some more orange. And I'm just kind of doing a small area of my pile because I don't really need that much. And then again, I'm gonna add white. I'm gonna skip adding the burnt orange this time. So we're a little bit lighter. Same thing, kind of scrape the excess off. And I'm gonna just lightly kind of brush this on to create some highlights. And I'm not filling it in completely. I'm letting those other orangey colors kind of shine through. So it's just not flat orange. It's streaky. And see, I'm not worrying about my leaf or my petals. I just want to continue the stroke through. And then one more layer. I'm just gonna do a little bit of white. On my dirty brush, I just picked up a little bit of white. So it's this very pale kind of orangey shade. And I'm just gonna put in some brighter spots. Very little paint on my brush, just kind of streaking it through. Okay, now I'm gonna start working on my petals. I'm gonna let that dry and we'll go back and add some details to it later. But we're good for now. So, you may want to use a big brush again because those petals are quite large on your board. I'm going to stick with this medium-sized brush. Also, feel free to use a smaller brush. The bigger brush that you use, the better, just because it leaves less brush strokes behind. But, I mean, don't go so big that, I mean, you're having a hard time and you're struggling. So use what's comfortable, but just keep in mind the bigger brushes, the end result is a little bit nicer just because you don't have so many brush strokes. So I'm going to use this nice dark yellow this time. And I'm going to add quite a bit of white. And this is just going to be like the base coat of those petals. We need to block out that wood and any of our like messed up lines where we were, you know, just streaking the orange through the pumpkin. So this is just like a primer layer, and you're gonna do nice thin paint. That's what I'm always preaching. We don't want globs. Don't worry, it's not covering nice in the first coat. We will do a couple. Just focus on getting your brush strokes evened out and any globs smoothed. The orange is a little wet over there. That's okay, because this is not my final coat. Just getting a base down so that our bright yellow will show up nice and vivid. And I'm not particular about the center of my flower either. That's gonna be a nice dark brown. So this kind of edging that's not real perfect, we can fix that up when we do the center of the flower. So I'm gonna go back in and do a second coat. Mine's mostly dry, so I'm not too worried. So I'm gonna hit it with my blow dryer real quick. one more coat. Same light yellow. All right, I'm gonna give that a minute to dry. Meanwhile, I'm gonna come up here and do my stem and these leaves. I know that this is very similar, this particular board, to the one that I had offered on slate. So if I do have extra slates from that class, I am gonna offer that as take home. And this is gonna be the same video. So if you happen to have purchased a slate as a take home kit, instead of the leaf being here, on what I'm painting, it's up here, and you're just gonna paint those leaves and these leaves the same. It's the same exact process. So I'm gonna start by making my dark brown, and it's gonna be about equal parts of the black and the burnt orange, maybe a little bit more orange than black. You're just gonna get that stirred in nice and even, so you have a nice chocolatey brown shade. And then I'm gonna fill in leaves in that stem. This is also going to be the color of the center of our flower, but I'm gonna wait till I get my petals all finished before I work on that. So I'm just kind of staying busy while that's drying. I'm gonna just flip this over just so I don't have to reach across my wet paint. I'm gonna get my stem filled in. And again, make sure that you are getting that white pencil line covered. You don't want that showing. Nice, thin, even coat of paint. Now I can't really see exactly where the edge of my leaves are here, but that's okay. I'm just gonna kind of flick out and create this kind of almost, it's like a little bit sharp. Kind of leaf pattern. So it doesn't have to be exact to what was sketched on there. Flip it this way so we can see it better. I'm going to add a little bit of white and some of my brown. I'll lighten that up a little bit. the excess kind of scraped out. I'm gonna use the edge of my brush so it's kind of narrow. And then I could kind of redefine the edges, especially where they overlap there and you can't really kind of tell where one starts and the other one begins. Maybe kind of sketch in a little vein. I'm just gonna brush in very lightly, very little paint on my brush, leaving a lot of that darker brown show. It's not a full coat, it's just kind of like how we did layers on the pumpkin. We're gonna kind of do a very similar thing on the leaves. I'm gonna also do that on my stem, just kind of on one side. I'm gonna switch to a smaller brush, maybe this long skinny one. A little bit more white. And then just kind of get some of those details in there a little bit better. Okay. Just mixing my paint up a little better over there. So that looks good. And you could do like just plain white. I can't even remember. I don't have my original one here with me. Took it home because I got to put the decal on. And I haven't done that yet. So we're going to come back down here. I'm going to go back to my bigger size brush here. So use whatever brush you were using before for your petals. This time we're just gonna do an even coat of yellow, the deep yellow, not that bright one. So this deep yellow, I'm gonna just add a little tiny bit of my pre-mixed light yellow and with quite a bit of the original, the darker yellow on my plate. And I just want a little bit of white in it just to kind of tone it down, because it's very bright. And I'm just gonna go in and put another coat just to get these nice and sunflowery yellow. So while these are a little bit wet still, whoops, I just smeared that. So we're gonna make that a little bigger now. And so while these are still wet, I'm gonna take just a little bit of this orange color, the lighter orange that we used on the pumpkins, and stir that in with some of my yellow. So I want it to look a little bit orange, but I don't want it to be like a drastic change. So very little on my brush. I'm wiping it off on the side of my plate, and I'm just gonna kind of swoosh in a little bit of this orange through my petals just to give them a little variation in color. And you see it's very subtle. Now I'm going to work on, well, not quite. I'm gonna add a little bit more. I want this to be dry though. So I'm gonna dry this because I want to get a little bit of a darker orange in there too, but I want this dry. I don't want it to be blendy. have the small square brush, and I'm going to take that orange, that lighter orange, and some of that burnt orange, kind of make an in-between shade. So it's lighter than my burnt orange, but darker than my light orange. And definitely darker than that yellowy orange. And I'm just gonna kind of do some quick little outliney, sketchy lines. Do some like little folds. Just a little defining our edges, putting in some like little wrinkles where the petal is growing out of the center. Now for the center, it's the dark brown, same color we used up here. I got a big old strip of white in there, so let me get that. So it's orange and black stirred together, and you make this nice brown. Now I'm just gonna get this all filled in. I'm gonna reshape my circle. Make sure I have all the wood covered. Now using my small square little brush, this one's kind of beat up a little so it's fluffier. I'm just gonna take that dark brown color, I'm just gonna kind of just rough up my edge. I'm just gonna dab it in so it's not a nice perfect smooth circle. So add a little bit of a texture. Now I'm gonna take just some of this burnt orange, just no mix, just plain burnt orange. And then I'm gonna kind of swirl it in. Give that a minute to dry. Doesn't need to be all the way dry because I kind of want the white to blend. And you could use a real thin brush. You can use a small square brush. I'm just gonna add some white to do like kind of like a spiral. You're gonna want to use a bigger brush with the great big board. I'm trying not to over mix, over blend. I still want to see some of that white in there. So if you just keep mixing, you're just going to end up with light brown. But I like to see like the defined little bits of white as well. So now I'm going to use my liner brush and my dark brown. I'm gonna dip my brush in a little bit of water and just stir it in just to thin it out. You just get nice, nice lines that way. It makes the paint flow a little nicer and like stretch a little bit further. So you don't have to keep going back for more. So I'm just gonna define my pumpkin segments. I'm gonna do my petals. Now I'm gonna do the same thing, but with some white. Let me just get a little white mixed in with a little bit of water. And it's okay if your water isn't perfectly clean. That little bit of tint to the paint is not going to be noticeable. And I'm gonna add a little bit of highlight. do on our flower, on the petals. Do up on my stems, on the leaves. A little bit more through here. Define that a little bit more. And then lastly, we just have like the squiggle. If you did the slate board, there's just a few squiggles kind of up in here around the sunflower. On this one, I got my squiggle, the little vine coming off of the pumpkin. And I'm gonna use, let's see, I like to use a square brush personally. So use whatever you're comfortable with. And I'm going to use the dark brown, same as the leaf colors. Get a little bit more made up here. And just whatever, which way, let's see. I've got wet paint there, I don't want to drag my hand in. So let's just have it come, I guess, here. I'm going to add a little bit of the lighter brown that I added into the leaves and the stem, just to give it a little bit of a highlight. Try not to put my arm in wet paint. Then I'll just take a little bit of white with my long skinny brush, just to give it that little extra pop. And we're done. I think we're done. There you go. Hope you enjoyed painting this with me. If you want to share them, I would love seeing them. You can take a picture of it, set up on your porch or wherever it is you have it displayed, and just send it to me in a message on Facebook or post it to the wall. Pretty sure that you can do that. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you.